If you have high energy and you come into a room of people and you light up the room with your presence and your voice and your actions, you energize everybody around you. And I can imagine that Jesus was very much like that. So we're talking about the Bible and interpreting the Bible. And there's a lot of conversation in the, popular literature and in social media, anywhere you get people talking about religion and spirituality. A lot of debate on whether the Bible is true, whether it was written by God or whether it's literally true or symbolically true. Lots of debate around that. But, there are great stories, like some of the movies we were just talking about, that are so real because they are like distillations of the human experience. They take everything about us and condense the human dilemma and present it in such a way that everyone, all of us, can identify with it. It can be a completely fictitious story, but because it touches us in our own real experience, the story can be more true, more real than what we think of as everyday reality. Lots of stories like that, especially, the Russian novelists, Tolstoy, Dostoevsky, people like that. They wrote stories that hit everyone right in the heart. Everyone could identify with the characters. We have to learn to look at the Bible in that way and not worry so much whether something actually happened, but look for a deeper way to relate to the stories. There are stories like David and Goliath. Did that really happen? It most likely did, or some version of it. But one of the things that the writers of the Bible did is that they would take a historical event, such as that battle where David killed Goliath, and use it as a backdrop to portray a deeper lesson, a lesson that has to do more with consciousness and spiritual development than it does history. So, and by so doing, they turn it into a legend. They turn it into a story that will never be forgotten. It's like a myth. A myth is a grand narrative. A myth is something that everyone can relate to and that gives us meaning and purpose in life, something to shoot for. So the Bible is full of stories like that. Some are obviously mythological, like the Garden of Eden. These stories tell us something about us. So one of the things I wanted to go over tonight is in Matthew chapter 7, verse. Well, let me read the first 12 verses. And now, before we do this, why don't we just get in a meditative frame of mind? If you want, you can close your eyes. It's okay if you don't, but get quiet. Get quiet within. Take a couple of deep breaths. Breathe in fully. And breathe out. Give a little sigh as you breathe out. It's like, do that a couple of times. Let your shoulders drop. Center yourself. Get out of your head. Drop down into your heart. Feel the expansiveness of that. So you drop down into your heart. It's like entering a large chamber. sense the expansiveness of it. This is a higher state of consciousness. And this is where you want to go whenever you read the Bible. You want to rise up in consciousness first and then read it. When we drop down into our heart, we're not thinking, we're feeling. We're sensing with an inner vision. It's the way you would feel if you were in a cavern and you turned off your flashlight and you're in a large chamber. You can just sense how big it is. No thought, no apprehension, just peace and a present awareness. Be present in this moment. Now I'm going to read this. Just try to stay in that space as I do. Matthew 7. Judge not that you be not judged. For with what judgment you judge, you shall be judged. And with what measure you meet, it shall be measured to you again. And why beholdest thou the mote that is in thy brother's eye, but considerest not the beam that is in thine own eye? Or how wilt thou say to thy brother, let me pull out the mote out of thine eye, and behold, a beam is in thine own eye? Thou hypocrite, first cast out the beam out of thine own eye, and then shalt thou see clearly to cast out the mote out of thy brother's eye. Give not that which is holy unto the dogs, neither cast ye your pearls before swine, lest they trample them under their feet, and turn again and rend you. Ask, and it shall be given you. Seek, and ye shall find. Knock, and it shall be opened unto you. For every one that asketh receiveth, and he that seeketh findeth, and to him that knocketh it shall be opened. Or what man of you is there, whom if his son ask bread, will give him a stone? Or if he ask a fish, will give him a serpent? If you then, being evil, know how to give good gifts unto your children, how much more shall your Father which is in heaven give good things to them that ask him? Therefore, all things whatsoever that ye would that men should do to you, do ye even so to them, for this is the law and the prophets. There's another line from Corinthians I want to tag onto this first reading. For now we see through a glass darkly, but then face to face. Now I know in part, but then shall I know even also as I am known. Okay. The last line in Matthew 7 is known as the golden rule. Do unto others as you would have them do unto you. I do believe I've found a loophole in that commandment. The loophole is this. I once bought my wife, my ex-wife now, a vacuum cleaner on her birthday. Scarred me for life. Her reaction, never got over it. Wasn't the only thing I bought her, but it was one of the things. It eclipsed everything else. I bought it because it was the best vacuum cleaner on the market. I think it was a 𝗵𝗎, expensive. The reason I bought it is because I love good tools. The better the tool, I'll pay anything if I think it's worth it. I never buy cheap tools. So when I saw this vacuum cleaner, I thought, man, this is a work of art. Well, as I said, it didn't go over very well because I was doing unto her what I would want her to do for me. I would have been thrilled had she bought me, say, a new table saw or a really good drill, something like that. That would have just warmed my heart. So maybe you can see the loophole in the golden rule. How can I give you anything if I base it on what I would like? You see, I can't even see you. In order for me to function with that law, that commandment, I would have to get out of myself and get into your shoes and look through your eyes back at me. I would have to know as I am known. Only then would I have a sense of what you are not only, that you would not only want, but that you would accept from me. There was an experiment somebody did in New York one time. Had a bunch of $5 bills. They went out on the sidewalk and started handing them out to people. Only one person in 10 would take the $5 bill. And why would that be? Because there's no basis for that interaction, is there? Everybody wondered, what does this guy want? Nobody gives anything away for free. So there's no trust there. If we can get inside the other person and see ourselves or the world as they see it, number one, that's an extraordinary feat of consciousness to do that. We think we can do it, but there's only a few people who really can. To know even as I am known. If I can see myself through your eyes, what would I see? If I knew, if I could do that, then I would know what you would be able to hear from me or to accept from me. And only then could there be a real connection. Only then would I be able to know you. So when we think of this in terms of the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you. You know, the Jews actually had a slightly different version of that. And this law, this what we call the golden rule, has its as an iteration, almost word for word, in every religion of the world. But the Jews say, do not do unto others what you would not have others do unto you. That's kind of a little bit better way to put it. It's a little more descriptive, and it gets around that loophole because I don't have to then do that feat of consciousness, that trick of consciousness. Because we know what we don't want. We don't want to be harmed. So if we follow the rule along those lines, then we wouldn't harm anybody else. We don't want to be cheated, so we wouldn't cheat anyone. We wouldn't want to be robbed, so we're not going to rob anyone. But to give unto others as you would have them give unto you, it's a different polarity to that. That takes a real depth of understanding. And it's, whereas the other is defensive, this is more positive and giving. So even though there's a loophole, I'm going to give Jesus a pass on this one, because I think it's actually better.
What do you think, Michael, about the notion that it's a matter of principle? Like you were talking about the the mythological stories.
Yeah.
And really, like, if Jesus's teachings were really more of a matter of principalities, the like the characters in the garden would be like symbols of those principalities or those principles, you know. I know you've said it before how it's archetypal, but it's easy to forget that if these are characters representing principalities or principles, then it's still a very true story. It's just that the characters are not just mere flesh bodies, right? They're like principles, which is like a vertical pillar. Each character is like a pillar piercing through planes type thing. And so when you think of the serpent, you think of the principality or the principle of polarity, for example. So it's like it's many the characters are representing many aspects that are common across planes, but in the sense of give unto others as you would have them give unto you. It's a matter, if it's a matter of principle in that sense, then we have to, like what you just said, really see through their eyes so that we can give on a higher level, you know, in the sense of something that would be giving, but giving on all planes, not just what would look good in appearance, or it would also have to be generous. Like if it's a generous gift, it's a generous gift across all. I'm using the word planes because I'm lacking other words, but you know what I mean by that with the
Yeah,
principle.
you could say, you know, dimensions instead of plane and planes.
Okay.
And simply, you know, like there's the dimension of the mind, you know, mental, what we're communicating to each other. Or there's a dimension of the heart, the feelings we have for each other. Or the dimension of understanding what, you know, not just what I'm trying to communicate, but what I understand about you, what you understand about me. Those are different dimensions or planes, you might say. So the principle here with the golden rule is give unto others. That's the key word. And so if we look at ourselves realistically, I mean, in terms of reality, we are energy beings. We have energy, the life energy moving through us. We're not just flesh bodies. If we took away the flesh body, then we would see that we're like an energy matrix that is informed with intelligence and history and a future, telos, as they say, a purpose, a direction in life. We have all of those things that are manifesting through this flesh body, but they're not. The flesh body is going to go. But these things that I'm talking about, they'll never go. They will live with us forever. So if we consider ourselves as flesh body or as energy beings, then we know that we're continually broadcasting information into the world, that the quality of our thinking, which is informed by our feeling, so this combination of thinking and feeling, that produces waves of energy that are being communicated to the world, to everyone around us. That's what people pick up. That's what little children and dogs pick up about a person right away, right? They sense their vibe. So we can say we have a vibration, or vibe, that tells people and animals whether or not we can be trusted, whether we're a threat or whether we're okay. You know, we're constantly putting that out into the world. And so if we look at the golden rule from that standpoint, which is, like you say, the standpoint of principle, then we can start to become conscious of what we're giving. What are we broadcasting? What's the quality of the vibration of our energy that people sense when they come in contact with us?
And that's
You
why
see,
it's so important to ask for what you do want. So the integrity of the focus of the intention and where the energy is going is focused on what you do want. Because as soon as you start to focus on that negative aspect of do not do unto others piece,
Yeah.
you scramble the loop with the energy. So you really need to keep your intentions pure and your focus clean.
Yes. Yes. I like that. I like that. And it's one for Jesus, the way he put it.
Absolutely.
So, and this, you know, we can express this in any number of ways. People are drawn to your character or they're turned off by your character. And your character, more than anything else, is the way you come across. It's what people sense in you, right? You can tell if when you meet somebody, if they're a good person or if they intend you harm, whether you can trust them or whether you need to be very careful around them. So this is nothing new, but we want to look at how Jesus understood this and what he was trying to teach us when he said that. It's like we are like miniature representations of the solar system. We are like a shining star. We're continually emitting light and life, the energy of life. You know, if you have high energy and you come into a room of people and you light up the room with your presence and your voice and your actions, you energize everybody around you. And I can imagine that Jesus was very much like that. So it's like he's saying, give, you know, don't be defensive, but give out into the world. It's like Martin Luther King said, be the change you want to see in the world. You say, give to the world what you would have the world return to you. So if you want the world to be a certain way, then you have to be that way. So I'm sure you can see the depth of this. This is way more than, you know, and you know how it is. You hear something often enough and you stop hearing it. It becomes a group of words like this starts to get collapsed into one lump. And we hear it and we dismiss it because we've heard it so many times, we already think we know what it means. But that's the challenge. If you want to read the Bible, you want to understand what it says, you have to slow way down and make your mind attend to what's actually there, what's being said, and the context within which it was said. Now, if Jesus had been a moralist and just was only concerned with people's behavior, he would have not been Jesus Christ. He would have been a rabbi. Because one of the reasons he came at that time was because this beautiful set of laws, the Torah, had devolved into a set of rules. And the way people judged each other was whether or not they followed the rules, regardless of what was in their hearts. So what Jesus did, I think it was his whole public ministry, was to make people aware of the spirit of the law. That's a higher order of abstraction. That's a more sophisticated way to think and to live. Now, the laws of the Torah were extremely sophisticated, way more so than people today give them credit for. The one that always gets me is an eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth. People think that means revenge. You know, somebody hurts you, you're obligated to hurt them back. You ask most Jews who are knowledgeable of their own religion, and they will tell you that's not what that means at all. What it means is proportionality. It means if someone knocks out your tooth, you do not have the right to gouge out their eye. You can get along pretty well without a tooth, but not without an eye. You see, that's out of proportion. So another one is really good too. There's something in the Torah that says that if you're speaking to the fathers, if your son offends you, stone him. And actually, that's not what it says. It says if your son offends you, take him to the council, and the council will decide whether he should be stoned. Now, people hear that and they think, wow, that's pretty intense and barbaric. Stoning your children, you know, killing your children. But what they don't realize is that at that point in human history, killing your children, that was a right that parents had. And, you know, of course, fell to the father to do it. So what the Jews did, they came along and said, no, you cannot kill your children. You must bring them to the council and let them decide. Now, according to scholars, that the council almost never decided to kill the child. But what that law did was it took infanticide, or killing your children, out of the hands of people. It was a prohibition against it. So for that day and that time, when killing your children was kind of the norm, they raised up the consciousness of the people to where that was no longer acceptable. And then, of course, over time, things like that take time. Then it becomes, you know, part of the culture, and then nobody wants to do that anymore. So we have to look at these teachings within their context. And in the context of Jesus Christ, he was a mystic, and he was a guru, which means a spiritual teacher with power and authority. He had the ability to change people from the inside out. That's what gurus do, because they work with energy. And by stimulating the kundalini within a person, you cause them to go through changes. They have to work out those changes, and gradually consciousness gets more and more expanded and enables the person to see more than just the physical world. So Jesus was on that order, and we know that he was because of his teachings, things that he said. He said things like, before Abraham was, I am. That drove the Pharisees nuts. They wanted to kill him for saying that because they couldn't understand it, because they had lost the spirit of the teachings. They had reduced the laws into rules. And then the way they would judge a person's character and his morals was how closely he could follow the rules. But we know that just following the rules, that doesn't mean anything. Anybody can do that. That's like changing yourself by force of will. You can't change yourself that way. You can't by will make your hair white or black, right? That kind of thing, or change your height, that kind of thing. Those are just allegories for, you can't change your character just by willing it. It has to come from the heart. And the way that happens is by raising your consciousness.
Could I ask a question?
Yeah.
So it says that Jesus was in the order of Melchizedek.
Yeah.
And I'm so curious about Melchizedek. Is that something that you know about or you could share about? Your mentioning of before Abraham was I am reminded me of this, because wasn't Melchizedek the one that anointed Abraham?
Yeah. Yeah. So here we've got a mythological character that is legendary. Probably was a real person, but it's what he represents and possibly the stature of this being. I think it said about him, wasn't it something like without father and mother, ancient of days? Yeah, something like that. So right away, we're being told this is no ordinary human being. This is a person who's coming from above in vibration. In other words, somebody who we call them, you know, the heavenly host or the brothers. They're the ones who no longer incarnate on the earth plane because they've passed all the tests. They've developed to the point where they don't have to take on a physical body, but they're right above this plane, and they're the ones who help us. So it's telling us pretty much straight up that this guy is not an ordinary human being because he has no father and mother, and he's been around forever, right? So we know this is not just a king. This is not just some other guru. This is somebody pretty darn special. So someone who maybe is able to cross the boundary between heaven and earth and visit earth and withdraw back up into heaven. You know, we don't know. We don't know how these. That's a level of spiritual evolution that you know, we don't really see ever.
Thank you.
So
I've just been curious about that, and this is you're the first one I've been able to ask. So thank you, since I've been.
yeah, so what it's really saying is that the lineage of the priesthood is not something that people made up. People did not institute the priesthood, because that's what Melchizedek was. He was a high priest, and he ordained Abraham. And so when we say that that Jesus is of the priesthood of Melchizedek, that means the lineage, the authority, the transmission comes from above. It does not have its origin within an institution. You see? This is divine authority. This is a divine lineage. Does that make sense, Leanne?
Yeah, that's great. It makes sense to me. It's just I'm not a biblical scholar. I like to read the Bible, but I love to ask questions and learn. So thank you. That's really helpful.
Yeah. Well, I'm not a biblical scholar either, thank God. That that really gets in the way. That can really get in the way, because if you go to a Bible college, they tell you how to think. They don't tell you just what to think. You know, they got that wrong. They tell you what to think, right? This is the line. This is the party line. You must stick with it. And they discourage any kind of mystical or deeply conscious approach to understanding scripture. And, you know, rightfully so, because unless you've worked on your consciousness to such a point where you really are vibrating at a higher level, you can come up with all kinds of crazy interpretations. So there's a dynamic going on between the scholars and the mystics. The scholars, they vet the mystics, and the mystics prove or disprove the scholars. So you can't just say anything. You can't bring something up in your imagination and say, well, this is what I think it says, and get away with it. They're going to pound the hell out of you to prove or to falsify what you're claiming. So it's a way to keep that knowledge in check so that it doesn't overstep itself. So that's ever and always the challenge of the spiritual path, is getting lost in your imagination. Because there's a level of mind that is quite chaotic and very creative. Things come into and out of form rapidly and without any real coherence. And if you just, let's say, this is a problem with drugs very often, with some of the mind expanding drugs, is that it can put you into a place where you see all these amazing, bright, shiny objects, but they vanish just as soon as you look away from them. The same goes for our understanding of Scripture. We can think we see something that makes sense, but we turn away and it just vanishes because it has no substance to it. You see? So we want to get to a point in our own spiritual evolution and development. So we don't just passively evolve, we have to actively develop our spiritual consciousness. As we do that, then we pierce through that layer of confusion and we start to see some real truths. And we see how things really fit together. And then they make sense. And they make sense because we can actually put them into practice and they work. Like this thing I'm saying about the golden rule, I think you can see the practicality of it. If you want to know how to be in the world, you have to be able to step back and see yourself as the world sees you. Otherwise, you can just get lost in your own story about yourself. We need each other so that we can see ourselves. As I am being with you, I'm relying on the feedback that I get from you to know whether or not we have a real live connection going on. And the real live connection, we can tell if it's there, if the energy is moving in a harmonious way. We do that all the time with each other. You come home, your spouse is there, and you instantly calibrate to each other, right? You're feeling each other out. What are you bringing from your day? What is the other bringing from their day? You see, and then there's an adjustment period. And that's how we stay sane. That's how we keep the connection real. Because unless there's a connection, there's no movement, there's no power. Nothing gets exchanged. It's just two isolated individuals living in the same house.
Say, hey, hon, I bought you this vacuum cleaner.
Right. Shows you how connected I was. That kind of tells the whole picture of why I'm divorced, right? So this is, if anything, if I can nudge you in any direction at all, it's to really look at these sayings in the Bible. I mean, they are gold. They are solid gold. They're some of the most sophisticated spiritual teachings ever. I mean, Christianity is one of the later religions, and people tend to think that it was just spun out of whole cloth, that Jesus dropped out of the sky and was completely unique, and Christianity is the only religion in the world, and everything about it is unique. Well, no, there's nothing about it that's unique, hardly anything, because everything that Jesus taught had been taught before, all the way back to the Egyptians and, the Mesopotamians, God knows how far back these things go. And he was articulate. It wasn't what Jesus said that set him apart, it's what he did. And that's a whole nother topic we can get into sometime. So, and it's like for us too. It's not what we say that matters in the world, it's what we do. But not just, in the sense, like I was talking about rules, or just doing things a certain way. It's not about behavior. It's about what we are emanating into the world. What are we being? What's that saying? It's like, you learn, you can learn from what I say. You learn more by watching what I do, but you learn most by what I am. You see, that gets to a person's character. That gets to the amount of inner work that a person has done, how conflicted they are within their heart and in their mind. If you ever meet an unconflicted person, you never forget them. If they're unconflicted in their heart and mind, that's a powerful person. And they're trustworthy. Even if they're bad, even if they're a bad person, you can trust them to be bad, right? So this is a level that we want to read sacred scripture, whether it's the Bible, the Torah, the Vedas, like the Bhagavad Gita, the Dhammapada, the teachings of Buddha, the Tao Te Ching. All of these sacred works are meant to be taken in. You kind of have to eat them. You can't just read them and squirrel cage in your mind about them. You have to eat them, really accept them. There's this Jewish scholar I really like. He said that when he encounters something in the Bible that doesn't sound right, instead of assuming that it's wrong, he assumes that he doesn't understand it. See, how many atheists have you talked to where they read something in the Bible and they write it off? That can't be real, it can't be true. And it's just the opposite. So this guy, he says if he encounters something he doesn't understand, he automatically assumes that it's right and he's wrong. And that then gives him something to grow into and increase his understanding, enlarge his heart, to expand his mind, which is what these teachings are designed to do. We say that they're written alchemically, which means they are transformative. Alchemy is about turning lead into gold. And people think that, well, it sounds like a pretty good deal, but that's not what it means. What it means is taking your lower nature and transforming it into your divine nature. It's purifying your lower self so that your higher self has a suitable vehicle through which to express in the world. That's transformation. You see, we walk around in these bodies are like, they've got, hundreds of millions of years of evolutionary, how do you say? It's like these biological patterns, like the will to survive. That's probably the strongest instinct we have. And the spiritual path is about not destroying those instincts, but directing them. You see? It's like being fully embodied and having and owning your instincts, but having a leash on them so that they don't run you, right? But we've got these instincts, and the way we grow spiritually is by transforming them, which is to take the energy of them and use that energy as fuel to power what we know is right. And by that, knowing what is right, it's like if we're awake, walk into a situation and you see what's needed, right? If your kids are completely going crazy and they're crying and screaming and throwing stuff all around, they need something, right? They need something from you. It doesn't take a genius to know that, right? So you might come in from the day and somebody just cut you off in traffic and you're really angry and you're filled with all of these instincts, conflicting instincts especially, and you walk in and you're faced with that. You don't make yourself bad for feeling that way. You go ahead and feel that way, and you feel the energy of that, and you funnel that energy into what the situation needs. You see? Because you can't just get rid of that. So if you try to get rid of those negative impulses, all you're doing is burying them. And they're going to surf, they're going to, like the AA people say, they're going to come out sideways.
It's like it's like the Hydra and Hercules, right?
Oh yeah.
When
Cut
you start,
one off and yep.
yeah, two more come up.
Yeah. Or whack-a-mole, you know?
Right. Whack-a-mole.
But do you get a sense of this? See, you can be angry and yet be kind. And what it does, what anger does is if you can harness it, what anger does is it gives you resolve. It makes you unmovable. It turns your, instead of a race car fishtailing and spinning all over the track, you become a locomotive. You see, if you can harness those energies.
I found it interesting that in the meditation that you started us out with,
yeah,
you said to rise up in consciousness by dropping down into our hearts.
Yeah,
a nice little paradox there. I feel like it that speaks to what you're saying right now.
yeah, yeah. Well, it's interesting, if you just take a moment right now and get in touch with your feelings. What do you feel? Are you interested? Are you self-conscious? Are you thinking of something that happened earlier or something you're going to do after this? Is there any background anxiety? Are you relaxed in your body? Are you tense? See, just getting in touch with that immediately puts you in touch with your subconscious mind. You see, so that you've altered your consciousness. In the same way, you can think about your higher self, maybe envision it as a being, an angelic kind of being, a perfected being standing right behind you. And it's you, it's you, it's the real you. See, just imagine somebody like that, just perfect in form and in state of mind and generosity and power. And just by putting your mind there, you've raised your consciousness. And then if you can envision that and feel that, then what's behind him or her? What greater being stands? No, there goes that thumb. Yeah, if you do this, the thumb appears. No, it won't. But what stands behind that higher part of you? It's almost like, who's observing your observer self? Right? What greater consciousness is there? And just thinking about that raises your consciousness. It changes the way, not only the way you see and feel, but the way you are. Because those planes of reality, when you think of them, they just flood into you. They just come into you. You see, if you if you know someone who's sick and you can connect with your higher self and what's behind your higher self and feel the movement of energy like that, and you bring that energy into your hands and you lay your hands on somebody, you're going to give them healing energy. You're going to affect the energy structure of their body. That's how healers work. But you can't do it from your will, you know. You can't do it because you got this idea of how it works. You know, you can't do it just simply by visualizing power moving through you into the person. No, none of those really work. The only way it really works is if you make that connection with that which is higher than you and higher than that, you see. You open up that channel to God, and you let God energy come through you. I just went to a healing seminar, and I love the way he put it. He said, let your hands be God's hands. You know, and if you can really make that interconnection with that the highest thing you can not conceive of, but connect with. See, what's the highest thing you can connect with? And then you pretend that that's occupying your body, and you lay your hands on somebody. That's power. I can feel it right now. It's anybody can do it. You don't have to be special. All you have to do is try it. God's no respecter of persons. God does not care how much you know or don't know. The only thing that matters to God is how well you can connect. You see, especially with God, right? You connect with God in that way, and then you connect with a person in front of you. You become a channel for grace, for power, for energy, for healing, light, life, love.
Can you speak to
Now,
the Psalm?
I'm sorry?
Can you speak to the Psalms and their capacity for this process of alchemy, of transforming the base instincts into, you know, and harnessing that energy? I find the Psalms really just a great guide for that, and I'm curious if you could speak on that.
The Psalms, is that what you said?
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Psalms.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. 23rd Psalm. Oh, my God. You know, you don't even have to think about it. You just say it. And, you know, how many millions, if not more, people have recited that Psalm in a deep devotional state of consciousness? So much so that Psalm has become an entity in the mind, in the collective consciousness and unconscious of humanity. So when we say it, we're hooking into it. And because it's divinely inspired, you know, whoever wrote that wrote it from a state of consciousness that was extremely high. And we know it because of the transformative effect of the psalm itself. So yeah, and it's interesting too that, you know, when Jesus was tempted in the desert, he didn't argue with the devil. He just quoted scripture. So what was that all about? That was it the literal devil? Was it this demonic being who appeared before Jesus and told him to do all those things? No, it was Jesus working out his own shadow. You see, it was Jesus learning how to channel the human instincts, the human instinctual being. So, and you know, what were they? First he said, turn these stones into bread. You've been fasting for 40 days. You know, what are you, crazy? Eat. Said, no, and he quoted scripture. Man is not, doesn't live by bread alone. And then he took him up on on the temple, I think, and said, jump off, because God will send his angels and rescue you. And said, no, it's written. He said, it's written. You shall not tempt the Lord thy God. And he saved the best for last. He took him up on a mountain and said, if you bow down and worship me, I will give you all the kingdoms of the world. You will be in charge of everybody. And who better, because you're so smart and you're such good-hearted, who better for the job? You're perfect for the job. Step up, do this. This is how you should rule. And Jesus, again, he quoted scripture. What did he say? No, I forget now exactly.
Get thee behind me. Get thee behind me.
Oh, yeah. And that's the best part. See, I think that's the best part because he didn't, Jesus didn't take out a sword and kill him, He didn't just chase him away. He said, get behind me. All right? Because I'm going to lead, not you.
It's very interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And I like to say, get behind me and push. You see? In other words, this is taking the energies of the human instincts, the energy of that. And we all know what that's like. If we get a shot of anger or a shot of fear, we get pride wells up, or we get ashamed of something. Those are very distinct energies and feelings. Nobody needs to tell you what those are. So what Jesus is saying is take those energies and use them as fuel, and then just simply do what's right. Go forth and sin no more, kind of thing. And this is shadow work. This is why Jesus is saying, the devil is saying to Jesus, hey, leave it all up to me. I'm going to sit behind the steering wheel, and all you need to do is come along for the ride, and I'll give you everything, all the kingdoms of the world. And Jesus says, no, I'm driving, you get behind, you push.
That's great.
Yeah. It's great to me. Any scholar would just laugh their head off, right? It's like,
no, well, yeah. Now you thank you for that, because you just explained that so well.
See, I'm confident that this is true because it works.
Yeah.
That's the proof.
Oh, yeah.
The proof is in the pudding. If these interpretations work, then you're onto something. And you don't just have to listen to me, you can work it out yourself. Find out, because the Bible is full of stuff like that.
Yeah. It's like, yeah.
Yep.
It's like Hercules
Yeah.
and the lion, right? He's wearing the lion's clothing, right? But after he conquers the lion, that animal instinct or nature.
Right. And it's very similar to the way that you see Buddha sometimes sitting in meditation with the huge cobra coming up behind him.
Yeah, exactly.
It's the same kind of thing.
Right. And I think you see pictures of the 𝗁RISHI. They'll put him sometimes on a tiger skin rug. Occasionally, have you seen those? Yeah.
Yeah. And Buddha's the lion's roar.
Yeah. Well, Jesus is the Lion of Judah, right?
Yeah. So this is a person who, these are all references to the person's state of spiritual evolution, spiritual development. This is saying this person is a master teacher. This person is a guru. This person is, in effect, a divine being. See, they're not an instinctual, intellectual animal. They are a divine being and they receive from above. They receive from a plane of being that's higher than the earth plane. Higher in vibration, right? Just like the notes on a musical instrument, they get higher and higher and higher because they're vibrating faster and faster. All of this is within Jesus's teachings. And if you realize who he is, and not just say that he's the only one, right? Because Buddha was a great being. There's lots of, Melchizedek, Solomon, all of these people throughout the ages were great spiritual beings. So if you take Jesus's teachings in that context, you see, then that gives you a whole different angle with which to look at these things. And then you discover it's not about rules to obey, it's about ways to be. It's getting in, doing your inner work so that you literally change how you vibrate. That your mental broadcast gets clearer and stronger and cleaner. But if it's all shot through with the energies of your lower instinctual nature, that robs you of strength, it robs you of clarity. It makes you prone to falsehood. You see, but all the opposite is true if you really go within and tap into the God energy in you and let it manifest through you. You're going to light up like a Christmas tree. That's what Jesus was about. See, that's the redemption. That's the resurrection. That which was dead has come back to life. Because if you're locked into your instinctual, intellectual energies, you're as good as dead. I mean, you're just like everybody else. There's nothing that makes you show up on God's radar. You're just another one of the herd. Because there's nothing to differentiate you from the planet you're on. You see, we rise up in consciousness, we do our inner work, we tap into the light and we let it change us. And thereby we start to stand out. Then God says, oh, there's another son. There's another son of God. Everybody else is kind of like a mass of people. They're loved and they're being taken care of the best way you can. But when somebody really is born, you see, born into the light, that person is known by God, you see. First we saw through glass darkly, then I saw face to face. I am known, I know even as I am known. So we got that going for us. So yes, Ben, the Psalms are great. My favorite, I've got a couple of them. I think it's the 119th Psalm, the one that has all the Hebrew letters in front of each paragraph. And yeah, that one, the 23rd. Oh, and I think it's the 22nd Psalm that Jesus recites when he's dying on the cross. My God, why hast thou forsaken me? I think that's right out of the 22nd Psalm. Yeah. He was always quoting scripture. Why? Why? That's really a good question, is why at these critical moments in his life did he quote scripture? He wasn't trying to argue his way out of it. Better way to say it, he wasn't trying to intellectualize it. He was drawing on a deeper, richer mind blended with heart, something that is much bigger than he is.
Would you say that he was also, because he was taking all of the old law onto himself, integrating all of that into the new pattern that he was
yeah, well,
bringing.
he said he's here to fulfill the law, right?
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
it's interesting. We talked about this recently, Michael. The 22nd Psalm.
Yeah.
It seems to precede awakening.
Yes.
And that I think is also an interesting pattern that he quoted that psalm.
Yeah, who are
that
you trying to
particular-
please? Who are you trying to please? You see, this is a really good way for us to look at this. How much of your life are you trying to look good? You know, how many things, how do you structure your life? Usually the way you structure it is so that you're going to succeed, you're not going to fail. And the way to succeed is you have to look good, you know? And you're basing your own being on the people around you, the society you're in, the tradition you come from, all your family, your spouse, you know, the way you are is dependent on all of these external measures. You see, what we all must do is get to the point where we can separate ourselves from all of those external measuring factors and become one, become totally alone. All one, alone. And you know, Jung called it individuation. It's like where you really own who you are. You don't make excuses. Because if you're always looking to the world for approval or for validation, then you can blame the world for all of your screw-ups. So in effect, you can say that Jesus taking on the sins of the world was simply Jesus owning his stuff, owning his own humanity, owning the fact that he has the same instincts that everybody else does because he's in a physical body. And how can you integrate your instincts, the very worst parts of you? How can you integrate those things unless you first own them?
I think of Psalm 130. Out of the depths I cry to you, O Lord.
Ooh.
You know, out of the depths. You know, and it's
Yeah.
Here I am in all my rawness.
Yep. Yep. You know, can you really do that? Can you stand in the cesspool of human existence? You know, stand in that and say, "Yep, it's where I'm standing. I'm not going to pretend otherwise."
And I'm just reading the 22nd you're talking about, and where he declares, "I'm a worm."
Yeah. Yeah. See, now that'll drive most new age people batshit crazy. They cannot tolerate that because, oh, I'm a sinner, right? And, you know, and that's a typical Christian trope. I am a sinner. And yeah.
I read
Yeah,
that
you are.
the
But wait a minute. Let me finish the thought.
okay.
Yeah, you are a sinner. You can't help but sin. You know, you can't help but be out of phase with the divine. But you got to own that. You see, and that's where the confess your sins comes in. It's not so that you can, you know, you're never, as long as you're in a body, you're not going to be exempt from the body's needs and the body's energies. You're going to have those. And so you have to learn how to harness them. You're not going to kill them unless you kill your body. But then they'll just live on in you in the afterlife in your astral form, and you won't have
Then
any
you
peace
become
there either.
then you become a hungry ghost, right? Like they
Exactly.
say.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Hanging around in the bars just to watch other people drink, you know, hoping to
Right.
get a whiff of it or something. Yeah. No, don't go there.
No.
So this idea of owning yourself, you see, that's the aloneness. Because then you're not dependent nor are you trying to prove. You know, you're not, until you can become a real individual, you can't be a real viable member of your community, you know, of your family or nation, whatever. You know, who's the most wanted person is the person who has integrity and who's strong and who can't be lied to, who isn't easily fooled, you know, a person who has vision, person who understands other people. Those are, everybody recognizes those people as heroic, you know, they're leaders, they're to be sought after, to be admired. But the
Yeah, but
only
what
way you
happens
can
to
do
the
that
heroes,
is to be
Michael?
true. Huh?
So, but what happens to the heroes?
Oh, they kill them.
Every time.
Yeah, just about every time. Yeah, unless you can outsmart them, stay one step ahead of them. You know, that's my plan.
When you said when you were talking about Jesus being inside of a body and not being able to get away from his own instincts, there's all kinds of movies like that too, or like the Shaggy DA or whatever, and the guy becomes a dog and he's sniffing
Oh, yeah.
around like a dog. He has all the instincts of wanting to do stupid things that dogs do, but then it's like human on the inside. So it's sort of like that kind of.
Yeah, that's a good analogy. Yeah, and when we're talking about Jesus, you know, here's a good working model. This is a good working model. This, if you use this, it really works. Take the name Jesus Christ and turn it into a formula. The name Jesus is you. That's you and your humanity. That's fill in the blank with your name. That's you. Christ is the God part of you. You see? So we've got our personality, we've got our body, we've got our situation, and yet we have this awareness of something greater, brighter, perfect, just right behind and above us. And if we open up to that and really amalgamate ourselves with it, and we let it change us without killing off our instincts, then we become Jesus Christ. You say, Michael Christ, Leanne Christ, Jesse Christ. So you see? The Jesus is you, the Christ is the God in you. Now that's a different perspective from which to interpret the Bible. So if you take everything that Jesus goes through and put yourself in that position, you see, and then start to realize or recognize how those very same events are showing up in your life, then you know you're on the right track and you can submit to them. You know, you can willingly go to your death, either the death of the ego or just live a deeply fulfilling and meaningful life, knowing that it's all going to end in your grave, right? I mean, so what? So what that we die? Are we living a good life? Does life have meaning? Is life worth living, even if we believe that it ends at death? Can we still lead a fulfilling, meaningful life? That's counter-instinctual. But that's what sets us apart as human beings. We have meaning. We invent meaning. You know, we can do that, but the only reason we can invent it is because there's a reality to it that we then make our modifications to.
So, Michael.
Yeah.
It seems that we would do well to see both sides of the story, you know, life and death. if we do that, then we can live like you're saying. We can live a meaningful life.
What are
You have to-
both sides? What do you mean both
Well,
sides?
I mean, beginning and end, life and death. You know, if you don't face the death side of it, can you really live meaningfully?
Oh,
It's easy to accept the
yeah.
beginning and the fact that, you know, we were born and so on. We're all interested in that. But we tend
Well,
to,
yeah.
what do you want to say?
Well, you know, it's like when the Greeks pulled up on the Persian shores and, you know, because they had to fight the Persians, and the commander told them to burn all the boats. You see, it's like, you know, essentially, he's telling his men, you're going to die here. You know, we've heard stories about, you know, in combat where everybody's getting ready to go into an impossible mission, and so everybody's writing their will, you know, they're writing their goodbye letters to their family and stuff. And then once that's done and they've really come to grips with their imminent mortality, man, they are unstoppable.
Mhm.
You can't take anything away from them, because they've already lost it in their minds and hearts. They've already given it up. And what's left is just this raw will to win.
Hmm.
So yeah, keeping your mortality in clear sight is really important. That's why you sometimes see skull and crossbones on crosses. Have you ever seen a cross with a skull and crossbones on it?
Yeah, the old gravestones down in Boston.
And
Yeah.
the Roman soldier slogan was Memento Mori. Every day they would tell themselves, remember, you too will die.
Mhm.
Yeah. There's humility, right? That's the greatest virtue, humility, because you're being humble in the face of your own fate, you know, your own fate in this world, you know. So yeah,
Hmm.
when you confront that, then yeah, nobody can scare you, nobody can dissuade you, you know. You're going to scare them.
Right.
Living well is dying well. I mean, so, you know, if you look at a rose, like so often, you know, at an early stage in my life, I would look at a rose and I would be so excited when that bud would be there, and the bud was the perfection, and the rose would be fully extended and in full bloom, and I'd be like, oh, well, it's just about over, and I'd even throw it out before it would even fully expand and grow. And now I save them till the little dried, because that's right now it's so great. You know, dying well is part of living well. That's the only way any of us is getting out of here. So we might as well honor it and
Yeah.
venerate the wisdom of aging, because gosh knows I've learned a little bit in the last 10 years, and hopefully more in the next 10.
Yeah. You know, I've been playing with that idea, you know, like if I knew I was going to die next week or even tomorrow, what would I do? You know, and I want to be in a place where I would keep doing exactly what I'm doing, because my life means that much to me. And I know that I'm not going to take this body with me or any of my stuff, you know, but my character, I am taking with me, because that's the nature of the soul. That's what the soul, you can pretty much equate your soul with your character. What have you actually become? That's your soul. And that outlives your body. That goes forward. Your body dies, but your soul, it never dies.
Mm.
So if you're living in such a way that you're you're trying to, and I, the character, that's a loaded word, but if you're living in such a way that you're expanding your consciousness, you are really doing everything you can to push the boundaries of reality, because that what you're seeing is not the whole story. It's not an illusion, it's just limited. We don't see most of what's here. But if we keep, and by see, I also mean understand, really comprehend. Do I really understand the events in my life? What did they mean? What did I learn from them? What would I do differently? Have I really owned my mistakes, for instance? Because if I've really owned them, they get in. Really owning my mistakes is like eating them, like food, which then becomes your body. So when you eat your mistakes, they get transformed, just like food gets transformed into flesh and bone. The very worst things that ever happened to you in your life, if you eat those, they get transformed, broken down into their constituent parts, and become part of your soul. You see? So we shouldn't fear death. We just want to stay busy right up to the end.
That's a good quote. You should write that one down.
T-shirt. Let's do T-shirts.
These guys do a good job. Dogs do a good job of living fully and living well.
I know. They're great. They're great. Everybody needs someone to worship them.
Yeah.
Well,
there's a quote about they say that like a dog will say, look at this person who feeds me and walks me and takes care of me, they must be a god. And cats look at us and say, look at this person who feeds me and cleans out my kitty litter box, I must be a god.
yes, right. and
Yeah, that's about accurate.
Yeah.
they even fooled the Egyptians.
Yes.
Me too. Well, this is a great class, Michael. Thank you very much.
Oh, you're so welcome. That's great. Glad
Yeah.
you got something out of it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is really rich. I appreciate you, Michael, and all of the insights and wisdom from everybody here tonight.
That was awesome.
Yeah, that's great. I'm glad you were here. Let's do this again. I mean, we're just scratching the surface of this. There's such depth to the teachings of Jesus and in the Torah. I'm thinking at some point, what I'd like to do is to do a whole series on the 10 Commandments and look at them from a metaphysical and spiritual interpretive stance.
That would be
Yeah,
super.
Jesse.
Well, when you were saying take the name Jesus and put your name in,
Yeah.
The word Christ is interesting because of its association with the crossing point and
Kairos.
when we were talking, yeah, it's really, I mean, crucified on a cross, Christ. I mean, these are crossing words, so there's a center point there, and that seems to be the inherent quality of that. And I'm not trying to intellectualize it, but just to be aware of the fact that to see the both sides of, we're talking about whether the stories are true or not, fact or fiction. We're talking about
you got to look at it from a higher level, from a higher perspective.
Yeah, seeing the central, what's central to both sides is I guess the whole idea of the Christ story.
Okay, so since you brought it up, let me just go into this a little bit, and then we'll close. So you've got a cross. It represents it's the horizontal and the vertical, but there's also a third axis, the front and back. So what we're dealing with is a fundamental geometric reality which is the XYZ axes. Everything in creation hangs on that scaffold. All of mathematics is like a function of that. In the Kabbalah, it's the cube of space. It's a cube. The XYZ axes are the interior of a cube, and that's endless in the reality of that. We are that. We have a vertical axis and we have a horizontal plane of action. So if you think of yourself, if you get in touch with the energy part of you, you know that you've got the crown chakra, you've got energy coming down through it all the time. As it comes down, it hits these different centers in the body and they radiate out. That's the horizontal axis. It's a universal form. You see it in galaxies. Anytime something moves, it spins. In this reality, it moves, it spins. And as it spins, you've got the direction of travel, but then you've got perpendicular to that, you have the radiation. You see, that's the cross. That's it's a fundamental form. So, and it's entirely descriptive and a powerful tool for manipulating and understanding the physical world. I mean, if you get that XYZ axis down and you work the math with it, then there's almost nothing you can't do. So it's a powerful tool. So we recognize that as like the scaffold of reality, and that's how we live in the three-dimensional world. So how do we get to heaven? Let's just, for convenience sake, let's call heaven the fourth dimension. So the other three dimensions are all at right angles to each other. Where the hell would the fourth dimension be? There's no way to conceptualize that. You can't have a fourth line that's perpendicular to all the other lines. What you can do, because our whole energy being is set up on this XYZ scaffold, you might say, we're constantly navigating, we're feeling, we're seeing, we're interacting with the world by extension of these three lines. That's what keeps us oriented in the physical world. It's like we're at the center of the intersection, and we're moving out from that into the world to get to heaven, or the fourth dimension. Instead of going out, projecting out into the world in these three directions, you go in. You see, you go in to the 0 point, to the zero dimension, to the dimensionless dimension. And this you can do. You can do it in your meditation. Just try it, think about it, do it, feel it. And if you do, you will collapse your awareness into that 0 point, and you will pop through into non-dual consciousness, into oneness, and it will change you from the inside out. And the beautiful part about this is it's not hard to do. The only reason it's been hard is because no one articulates it like that. The closest you come to it is somebody says, well, go within. Oh, well, great. Where's that? And everybody's looking for where within is,
Mm-hmm.
It's a cruel hoax. Just go back in. Everything about us extends out into the world. We're constantly stabilizing and orienting and predicting and remembering. You see, all of this stuff. So instead of projecting out, collapse it in. Bring it all in to the 0 point.
wouldn't the 0 point be something like, my God, why hast thou forsaken me?
Yes. Yes. Because that's the way it feels.
Yeah.
Mm.
Nothing makes sense. You have to be able to let that everything go, even and especially your concepts of God. Now, this,
Thanks
what I'm
for saying
describing
that,
to
Ben.
you. Oh, yeah, sure, anytime.
Well, you know, I
Yeah.
had this thought the other day of that exact psalm, and it wasn't a tragedy. It was a remembrance. So I'm not, but I also know what you're saying, Ben. It's that's kind of maybe the deterrent for going there, because we don't want to be the ones to speak those words.
Yeah, maybe. I think the main thing is that you want to commit, you know, you want to commit to a course of action, whether you understand it or not. And, you know, like if you're on a high dive, you want to get to, like up on the platform, you know, you want to get to the end of the platform, knowing what you're going to do before you do it, right? And then once you jump off, you're committed to that. You can't change your mind in the midst of it, or, and this is even worse,
You
thinking,
can.
well, maybe should I have done another, you know, should I have done a different dive, you know,
Oops.
or who's to say that this is the right dive that I should have done, right? You
Yeah.
kind of have to, you have to be a fool for Christ, as Paul would put it, and the fool in the tarot. You have to be a fool. Take the leap. Don't try to figure it out. Figure out what you're going to do, then do it. Don't second guess it. Don't think what if or how about or any of those other things. Just commit to one thing and do it. And then once you do that, you say, wow, that really worked. Then you do something else. You do the next thing. But trying to completely understand something before you take action, that'll kill you. You're not gonna go very far, very fast. You kind of have to you have to be simple, you know? I mean, you can really be contemplative. You can think about these things all you want. And we get marvelous realizations from that. But when it comes to actually moving the dial, you have to pick one thing and do it. Take it to its completion. You see, that's how you grow. But if you overthink stuff, then you never do anything.
We were in a healing class recently, and some of what they talked about was how our language even informs us on these things. So when we say something like calm down, right? Or, you know, I'm beside myself, like literally energetically, we are out of sync, out of sorts. We need to calm, center, and we don't even think about it. It's just such a part of everyday speech. But the wisdom is there for us if we pay attention.
Yeah. It takes work. You know, you really have to commit and do the work, the inner work. And then these things start to, you know, they start to make sense. Life gets real, and life, and also this world becomes more like what it is, which is like an incomplete, very incomplete version of what actually is. All righty.
So rich.
Great.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Y'all come back now.
Yeah. I'll come back now.
All righty.
Good night.
Right.
Good
See you
night.
later.
Bye-bye.
Bye.